The rain came down in sheets, blurring the neon lights of the diner where I sat, staring at my untouched coffee. At 22, I thought I knew what longing felt like until I saw her. Claire, my mom's old college friend, watching me from across the room with eyes that held secrets I couldn't name. That look, soft yet piercing, turned my world upside down in a single heartbeat. It was a Thursday in late autumn, the kind of day in Portland, Oregon, where the air smelled of wet leaves and regret. I'd come to this diner to escape the suffocating silence of my apartment, a place that felt too big since Mom passed 2 years ago. I wasn't expecting Claire, hadn't seen her since I was a kid, when she'd visit with her warm laugh and stories of her and Mom's wild college days. Back then, she was just Claire, the cool aunt figure who'd sneak me extra cookies and tell me I'd grow up to break hearts. But now, 45, she was different, still striking, with short, silver-streaked hair and a quiet intensity that made my pulse race for reasons I couldn't explain. She slid into the booth across from me, her smile tentative, like she was testing the waters. "Emma," she said, her voice low, almost reverent. "You've grown up." The way she said it wasn't just an observation, it was a confession, layered with something I couldn't yet grasp. I laughed nervously, brushing a strand of chestnut hair behind my ear, suddenly hyper-aware of my faded denim jacket and the chipped nail polish on my fingers. "How did you even find me here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She mentioned running into my cousin at the grocery store, who'd mentioned I was still in town, working at a bookstore and figuring things out. But the way her eyes lingered on me, like she was seeing someone else entirely, made my stomach twist. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was something deeper, something that felt dangerous and alive. We talked for hours that first night, the diner emptying around us. She told me about her life, how she'd left Portland after college, built a career as a freelance photographer in Seattle, and never settled down. "Too restless," she said with a wry smile, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of pain. I shared my own story, or what little there was, dropping out of college after Mom's cancer took her, working odd jobs, and avoiding the future like it was a debt collector. I didn't mention the part where I'd been running from myself, from the questions about who I was and who I wanted to love. I'd always known I was drawn to women, but saying it out loud felt like stepping off a cliff. Claire leaned forward, her fingers brushing the rim of her coffee cup. "Your mom used to talk about you like you were the sun itself," she said softly. She was right. My breath caught. No one had spoken about Mom like that since she died. Like she was still here, still lighting up the room. I wanted to ask Claire more about Mom, about their friendship, about why her gaze made me feel like I was unraveling, but the words stuck in my throat. As we left the diner, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective. Claire offered to walk me home, and I didn't say no. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was heavy, charged with something neither of us was ready to name. At my doorstep, she hesitated, then reached out, her hand grazing my arm. "Can I see you again?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my heart pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it. That night, alone in my apartment, I couldn't sleep. Claire's face kept flashing in my mind, her sharp cheekbones, the way her eyes softened when she said my name. I'd never felt this before, this pull toward someone who was both a stranger and a piece of my past. But she was Mom's friend, twice my age, and the weight of that fact pressed against my chest. Was I imagining things? Was this just grief playing tricks on me? Or was there something real in the way she looked at me? Something that could upend everything I thought I knew about myself. The next morning, I found her business card slipped into my jacket pocket, Her handwriting scrawled on the back, "Call me." See. I stared at it for an hour, my thumb tracing the letters. I didn't know then that this was the beginning of something that would break me open and rebuild me. That Claire wasn't just a ghost from Mom's past but a mirror to my own heart. All I knew was that I had to see her again, even if it scared me to death. I called Claire the next day, my hands trembling as I dialed. Her voice on the phone was warm, like a fire I wanted to curl up next to, and she suggested we meet at a small art gallery downtown. "I want to show you something," she said, and I could hear the smile in her words. I didn't know what I was walking into, but the thought of seeing her again made my skin hum with anticipation. The gallery was tucked between a bookstore and a vintage shop, its walls lined with photographs that felt like windows into someone's soul. Claire was already there when I arrived, standing in front of a black and white photo of a woman laughing in the rain. She turned as I approached, her eyes lighting up. "This was your mom," she said, pointing to the photo. My heart stopped. Mom looked so young, so alive, her hair plastered to her face, her smile wide and unguarded. I hadn't seen her like that in years, not since the cancer stripped her of her light. Claire told me she'd taken the photo during their senior year at college, when they'd run through a storm after a late-night study session. She was fearless, Claire said, her voice thick with memory. She made me feel like I could be, too. I wanted to ask what she meant, but the way she looked at me like I was carrying a piece of Mom's fire made my throat tight. Instead, I just stood there, letting the weight of her words settle into me. We wandered through the gallery, Claire pointing out her favorite shots, each one a story of her life. She talked about her travels, the people she'd met, the moments she'd captured through her lens. But there was a thread of loneliness in her stories, a quiet ache that mirrored my own. I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone, how I felt lost without Mom, how I was scared I'd never figure out who I was supposed to be. She listened like every word mattered, her gaze steady and kind. After the gallery, we ended up at a nearby park, sitting on a bench under a canopy of golden leaves. The air was crisp, and I pulled my jacket tighter, suddenly aware of how close we were sitting. Claire's hand rested on the bench, inches from mine, and I fought the urge to bridge the gap. "You're a lot like her, you know," she said, her voice soft but heavy. "Not just in how you look, but in how you feel things. Deeply." I blushed, unsure if it was a compliment or a warning. I asked her about Mom's college days, desperate to keep the conversation safe. But Claire's answers were careful, like she was guarding something. She told me about their late-night talks, their dreams of changing the world. But there was a hesitation in her voice, a story she wasn't telling. I pushed, gently, asking if Mom ever talked about love. Claire's smile faltered, and for a moment, I thought I'd crossed a line. "She loved fiercely," she said finally, her eyes distant, but not always in the way people expected. That night, I lay awake again, replaying every moment with Claire. The way her fingers had brushed mine when she handed me her scarf in the chilly park air. The way her laugh felt like a gift. I was falling into something I didn't understand, something that felt both inevitable and impossible. Claire was Mom's friend, someone who'd known me as a child. The age gap, the history, it should have stopped me. But it didn't. Instead, it made me want to know her more, to peel back the layers of her guarded smiles and find the truth she wasn't saying. The next week, we met again, this time for dinner at a quiet Italian place she loved. The candlelight flickered across her face, softening the lines of her years, and I couldn't stop staring. She caught me once, her lips curving into a teasing smile. "What?" she asked, and I mumbled something about her earrings. my face burning. But she didn't push. Just let the moment hang between us. Electric and unspoken. As we walked back to my apartment, the city buzzing around us, I felt brave or reckless. I stopped under a streetlight and turned to her. "Why do you keep looking at me like that?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Claire froze, her eyes searching mine. For a second, I thought she'd brush it off, but then she stepped closer. So close I could feel the warmth of her breath. "Because I see you, Emma," she said. "And it scares me how much I want to keep seeing you." My heart thudded so hard I thought it might break. I wanted to ask what she meant, what this was, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I reached for her hand, my fingers trembling as they found hers. She didn't pull away. And in that moment, under the glow of the streetlight, I knew there was no going back. Holding Claire's hand under that streetlight felt like catching lightning in a bottle, thrilling, dangerous, and fleeting. I didn't know what I was doing, only that her touch anchored me in a way I hadn't felt since Mom died. But as we stood there, the weight of her words, "I see you, Emma," sank in, and I realized I was stepping into something I wasn't sure I could handle. The next few weeks were a blur of stolen moments. Claire and I met whenever we could: coffee shops, late-night walks, a quiet bookstore where we'd read poetry to each other, laughing at the cheesy lines. She was careful, always keeping a slight distance, like she was afraid of crossing a line she couldn't uncross. But I wasn't. I was 22, reckless with my heart, and every time she smiled at me, I fell a little deeper. One evening, she invited me to her apartment, a small loft overlooking the Willamette River. The space was all Claire, walls covered in her photographs, shelves stuffed with books, and a record player spinning soft jazz. She cooked dinner, a simple pasta dish, and we sat on her couch, wine glasses in hand. The air felt thick with possibility, and I couldn't stop watching her, how her fingers moved when she talked, how her eyes crinkled when she laughed. "Tell me something real," I said, emboldened by the wine. She raised an eyebrow, setting her glass down. "Real?" she echoed, her voice teasing but guarded. I nodded, leaning closer. "Something you've never told anyone." She hesitated, her gaze dropping to her hands. Then, quietly, she said, "I was in love once." It broke me. My heart twisted. I wanted to ask who, when, why, but the rawness in her voice stopped me. Instead, I reached out, my hand covering hers. "You're not broken," I whispered. She looked at me then, her eyes glistening, and I saw the fear, the want, the war inside her. That night, we didn't kiss, but we might as well have. The way she held my gaze, the way her thumb brushed my knuckles, it was more intimate than anything I'd ever known. When I left, she hugged me at the door, her arms lingering longer than they should have. "Be careful with me, Emma," she murmured. I didn't know what she meant, but it felt like a warning. The next day, I found an old photo album in Mom's things, tucked away in a box I hadn't touched since her funeral. It was from her college years, filled with pictures of her and Claire laughing at a bonfire, arms around each other at a protest, their faces bright with youth. In one photo, Claire was looking at Mom the way she looked at me now, and my stomach dropped. Had there been something between them? The thought made my head spin, not with jealousy but with a strange sense of connection, like I was picking up a story Mom had left unfinished. Called Claire, my voice shaking as I asked her to meet me. We sat in a quiet corner of a cafe, the photo album between us. "Was there something with you and Mom?" I asked, my heart in my throat. Claire's face paled, and for a moment, I thought she'd bolt. Then she sighed, her shoulders sagging. We were close, she said carefully. Closer than most. But we never. It was complicated. She wouldn't meet my eyes. And I knew there was more she wasn't saying. I didn't push. But the air between us shifted, heavy with the ghosts of their past. After that, things got messy. I started noticing the looks we got when we were out together, the raised eyebrows, the whispered comments. Portland was progressive, but not everyone was kind. And the age gap between us didn't help. My cousin, Jen, cornered me one day, her voice sharp. What are you doing with Claire? She's old enough to be your mom. I bristled, telling her it was none of her business. But her words stung. They echoed the doubts I was trying to ignore, the ones that crept in late at night when I wondered if I was just a stand-in for someone Claire had lost. But then there were moments that drowned out the noise. Like the time Claire took me to a quiet beach an hour outside the city, where we walked barefoot in the sand, the wind tangling our hair. She told me about her dreams, how she wanted to travel the world again, capture stories through her camera. Would you come with me? She asked, half joking, but her eyes were serious. I said yes before I could think, my heart racing at the thought of a life with her, even if it was just a fantasy. By the time we hit the 6-week mark, I was in too deep. Every touch, every glance, felt like a promise. But Claire was still holding back, and I could feel the weight of whatever she wasn't telling me. I wanted to break through, to know all of her, but I was terrified of what I might find. Because the truth was, I wasn't just falling for Claire. I was falling for the part of me she was helping me discover, and I didn't know if I could handle losing either one. The first time Claire kissed me, it was like the world split open. We were in her loft, rain tapping against the windows, a Billie Holiday record spinning softly. I'd been rambling about a book I loved, and she just leaned in, her lips brushing mine, tentative at first, then sure. I froze, then melted, my hands finding her face as I kissed her back, every nerve alight. When we pulled apart, her eyes were wide, like she'd surprised herself. I shouldn't have done that, she whispered. But I shook my head, heart pounding. Don't say that. That kiss changed everything. We couldn't pretend anymore, not about the pull between us, not about the way our lives were tangling together. But it also cracked open the doubts I'd been burying. Claire was 45. A woman who'd lived a life I could barely imagine. And I was just starting mine. What did she see in me? Was I a fling? A way to relive her youth? Or was this real? The kind of love that could rewrite everything? We spent the next few weeks in a haze of closeness. She'd text me in the middle of the day. Little things like saw a flower that reminded me of you or meet me at the pier tonight. We'd walk through the city, her arm brushing mine, and I'd feel like I was floating. But there were moments when she'd pull back, her face clouding over, like she was wrestling with something she couldn't share. I tried to ask once, after a quiet dinner at her place, but she just smiled sadly and said, "Some things are better left in the past." The past kept creeping in, especially when I found another photo in Mom's album, a Polaroid of her and Claire, arms around each other, their faces pressed close. On the back, in Mom's handwriting, was a single word: forever. I couldn't shake the feeling that Claire's hesitation was tied to Mom, to whatever they'd shared. I started to wonder if I was chasing a shadow, trying to fill a space Mom had left behind. One night, I pushed too hard. We were at a bar, a cozy place with fairy lights and live music, when I asked her point blank, "Were you in love with my mom?" The question hung between us, sharp and heavy. Claire's face went still, her drink halfway to her lips. "Emma," she said, her voice low. It's not that simple. But I pressed, my voice rising. Then make it simple. Tell me the truth. People were starting to glance our way, but I didn't care. I needed to know. She set her glass down, her hands trembling. I loved her, she said finally, the words cutting through me. But she didn't love me back. Not like that. The admission hit me like a punch. I wanted to ask more. How? Why? But the pain in her eyes stopped me. Instead, I reached for her hand, squeezing it tight. I'm not her, I said softly. I'm me. She nodded, but the sadness in her smile told me she wasn't convinced. After that, things got harder. The world wasn't kind to a stranger's stares, my cousin's disapproval, even my own doubts. Jen called me again, her voice sharp. You're making a mistake, Emma. She's using you to feel young again. I hung up, furious, but her words burrowed into me. I started noticing things, the way Claire sometimes looked at me like she was seeing someone else, the way she avoided talking about the future. Was I just a moment for her? A fleeting escape from her regrets? But then there were nights when it felt like we were the only two people in the world. Like the time we drove to the coast, the ocean stretching out endless and wild. We sat on a blanket, sharing a thermos of coffee, and she told me about her first camera, a gift from her dad before he passed. It taught me to see the world differently, she said, her voice soft. To find beauty in the broken things. I kissed her then, fierce and sure, wanting to be her beauty, her unbroken thing. By the time winter settled in, I was torn. I loved Claire, loved her laugh, her quiet strength, the way she made me feel seen. But I was scared, too scared of the past she carried, scared of what it meant for us. I started pulling back, canceling plans, making excuses. Claire noticed. Of course, she always noticed. One night, she showed up at my apartment, her coat dusted with snow. Talk to me, Emma, she said, her voice breaking. Don't shut me out. I wanted to tell her everything, me fears, my doubts, the way I was drowning in my own heart. But all I could do was stand there, tears burning my eyes, knowing that whatever came next would either save us or break us. I stood there, snow melting into Claire's hair as she waited for me to say something. Anything. My apartment felt too small, the walls closing in as I tried to find words for the storm inside me. I'm scared, I finally admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Scared that I'm not enough for you. That I'm just a replacement. Claire's face crumpled, and she stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Emma. No, she said, her voice fierce. You're not a replacement. You're you. But the doubt in my chest didn't budge. I told her about the photo, the word forever in Mom's handwriting, and how it made me feel like I was competing with a ghost. She listened, her eyes never leaving mine, and when I finished, she took my hands, her touch grounding me. I need to tell you the whole story, she said, guiding me to the couch. What followed was a confession that unraveled everything I thought I knew. In college, Claire had fallen in love with Mom. But Mom was straighter at least. She'd chosen to be. They'd been inseparable, sharing dreams and secrets. But when Claire confessed her feelings, Mom pulled away. Not out of cruelty but fear. She loved me as a friend, Claire said, her voice thick. But I wanted more. It broke us for a while. I sat there, stunned, trying to picture Mommy fierce. Stubborn Mom caught in that kind of heartbreak. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. Claire sighed. rubbing her temples. Because I didn't want you to think the Seuss was about her. It's not. I see you, Emma. Not her. Her words were a lifeline, but they didn't erase the fear that I was stepping into a story that wasn't mine. After that night, we tried to find our rhythm again. We spent Christmas Eve together, decorating a tiny tree in my apartment, laughing as we untangled strings of lights. Claire gave me a photo she'd taken of me at the beach, my hair wild in the wind, my smile unguarded. "This is how I see you," she said, and I kissed her, letting myself believe it could be that simple. But it wasn't. The world kept pushing back, friends who didn't get it, family who judged, and my own heart, torn between love and doubt. One day, I ran into an old friend from high school, Sarah, who'd heard about me and Claire. "You're really with her?" she asked, her tone sharp with disbelief. "She's, like, ancient." I laughed it off, but it stung. And when I told Claire later, her face tightened. "I know what people think," she said quietly. "I've lived it before." I wanted to reassure her, to say it didn't matter, but the words felt hollow. Because it did matter to me, to her, to everyone watching us. Things came to a head at a New Year's Eve party at a mutual friend's house. The room was loud, crowded with people I barely knew, and Claire was across the room, talking to someone about her latest photography project. I watched her, the way she moved, the way she lit up, and I felt a surge of love so strong it scared me. But then Jen was there, pulling me aside, her voice low and urgent. "You need to end this, Emma. It's not fair to either of you." I snapped, telling her to stay out of it. But her words echoed the ones I'd been whispering to myself. I found Claire outside, standing alone on the porch, her breath visible in the cold air. "What's wrong?" she asked, seeing my face. I didn't know how to say it, how to tell her I was drowning in my own fears. Instead, I kissed her, hard and desperate, like I could hold on to her through sheer force of will. But when we pulled apart, her eyes were sad. "You're not sure about this, are you?" she asked. I opened my mouth to deny it, but nothing came out. The next week was torture. I avoided her calls, buried myself in work, tried to pretend I could go back to who I was before her. But every night, I'd see her face, hear her voice, feel the ache of missing her. I was running, but I didn't know from what her, myself, or the truth we were both afraid to face. Then, one morning, I found a letter slipped under my door, Claire's handwriting on the envelope. My hand shook as I opened it, knowing whatever was inside would change everything. Claire's letter was short, but every word cut deep. "Emma, I've spent my life running from what I want because it hurts too much to hope. You made me hope again, and I'm terrified of losing that. But I can't keep you if you're not sure. Come find me if you are." See, I read it over and over, tears blurring the ink, knowing I had to make a choice: run from this or fight for it. I didn't go to her right away. Couldn't. I spent days wandering Portland's streets, the city's gray winter sky mirroring my indecision. I thought about Mom, about Claire's confession, about the way love seemed to break as much as it built. I thought about myself, too, how I'd spent years hiding from who I was, afraid to claim my own heart. Claire had seen me, truly seen me, and that was both a gift and a weight. Finally, I went to her loft, my heart pounding as I knocked. She opened the door, her face a mix of hope and fear. And I didn't wait, I pulled her into my arms, burying my face in her shoulder. "I'm sure," I whispered. "I'm so sure." She held me tight, her breath shaky, and for the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. We talked all night, laying everything bare. Claire told me about the years after Mom, how she'd tried to move on, how she'd never let herself love again until me. I told her about my fears of not being enough, of the world's judgment, of losing her. We cried. We laughed. We promised to be honest, even when it hurt. And when she kissed me, slow and deep, felt like a vow. But love doesn't erase the world. We faced whispers, tears, even outright hostility. At a gallery event for Claire's new exhibit, a woman I didn't know cornered me, her voice dripping with disdain. "You're just a phase for her," she said. I wanted to snap back. But Claire was there, her hand on my back, her voice calm but firm. "She's my future," she said. And the woman walked away, silenced. I looked at Claire, my heart swelling, and realized she was fighting for us, too. We started building a life together, piece by piece. We'd cook dinner in her loft, dance to her old records, plan trips we might never take. But the past wasn't done with us. One day, I found a box in Claire's closet, filled with letters from Mom, letters I'd never seen. They weren't love letters. Not exactly. But they were intimate, full of dreams and fears and a closeness that made my chest ache. One, dated a year before I was born, ended with Mom saying, "I'm sorry I can't be what you need." I sat there, the letter in my hands, feeling like I'd stumbled into a wound that wasn't mine. When Claire found me, she didn't flinch. She sat beside me, her voice steady as she explained. "Your mom was my first love, but she chose a different life." I made peace with that. She took my hand, her eyes fierce. "You're not her, Emma. You're my choice." I wanted to believe her, but the letters lingered. A reminder that love could falter, that it could hurt. We pushed forward, but the cracks were there. I started noticing how Claire would tense when Mom's name came up, how I'd catch myself wondering if I was enough. One night, after a fight about something small, dishes, of all things, I snapped, "Do you even want this? Or am I just here to fill a void?" Claire's face fell, and she reached for me, but I pulled away. "I love you," she said, her voice breaking. "But I can't keep proving it if you don't trust me." I left her loft that night, the city blurring through my tears. I wanted to trust her, to believe in us, but the weight of her past and mine was too heavy. I spent the next few days in a fog, avoiding her calls, trying to figure out what I wanted. I loved Claire, more than I'd ever loved anyone, but love wasn't enough if I couldn't let go of my doubts. Then, one morning, I got a text from her, "Meet me at the diner. Please." It was where we'd started, where she'd first looked at me differently. I didn't know what I'd say, but I knew I had to go. Because even if it hurt, even if it broke me, I couldn't walk away from her without knowing the truth. The diner was nearly empty when I walked in, the same neon lights casting a soft glow over the worn booths. Claire was there, in the same spot where we'd first reconnected, her hands wrapped around a coffee mug. She looked up as I approached, her eyes tired but hopeful, and I felt my heart lurch. This was the moment we'd either hold on or let go. I slid into the booth, my hands shaking. "I'm sorry," I said before she could speak. "I've been unfair to you." Claire's face softened, but she didn't interrupt. I took a breath, forcing myself to say what I'd been carrying. "I'm scared I'll never measure up to her, Mom. But I love you, Claire, and I want this to work." Her eyes glistened, and she reached for my hand, her touch steady. "I love you, too," she said. "And I'm done letting the past hold me back." We talked for hours, peeling back the last of our fears. Claire admitted she'd been afraid of repeating history, of loving someone who might not stay. I told her I was afraid of being a placeholder, of losing myself in her story. But as we spoke, I realized something. We weren't just fighting for each other, we were fighting for ourselves. For the courage to love without apology. We left the diner hand in hand, the rain starting to fall again. But this time, it didn't feel like a weight. It felt like a cleansing, like the world was giving us a fresh start. Over the next few months, we built something real. We faced the world together, its judgments, its doubts, and found strength in each other. My cousin Jen came around, slowly, after seeing how Claire grounded me. Friends who'd questioned us started to see the love, not the labels. One spring evening, Claire took me back to the beach where we'd shared that thermos of coffee. The sky was pink and gold, the waves crashing softly. She pulled out her camera, snapping a photo of me laughing, then set it down and took my hands. "I want a life with you," she said, her voice steady. "Not just moments. A life." My heart swelled, and I nodded, tears spilling over. "Me too," I whispered, and we kissed, the ocean bearing witness to our promise. The letters from Mom, the doubts, the whispers, they didn't disappear, but they lost their power. I framed the photo of Mom and Claire from college, a reminder that love, even unreturned, had shaped us both. Claire's love for Mom wasn't a shadow over us. It was part of the path that led her to me. And I was learning to love myself, to not as Mom's daughter, but as Emma, whole and enough. Years later, we'd look back on that diner moment as our turning point. We built a life, Claire's photos on our walls, my books scattered everywhere, trips to places we'd only dreamed of. We fought. We grew. We loved fiercely. And through it all, I carried a truth I hadn't known at 22. Love isn't about being perfect or fearless. It's about showing up, scars and all, and choosing each other every day. As I write this, Claire's asleep beside me, her silver-streaked hair spilling across the pillow. I think of Mom sometimes, how she'd smile if she could see us. I think she'd be proud not just of me, but of Claire, for finding the courage to love again. And I'm proud of myself, for stepping into a story that was mine to write, for finding a home in someone who saw me, truly saw me, and loved me anyway.